Hello everyone, we have once again successfully made it to the end of another year, another wonderful year for films, for cinema, and this, as it says on the title, will be my top 10 favorite films of the year list. And actually with this year, I've been lucky enough to see a lot of films ahead of time and certain films that wouldn't have come out because of bizarre release dates. So really the only films that I haven't seen that might have made it onto this list would be Godzilla Minus One, The Boy and the Heron, Wonka, that kind of stuff, Anatomy of a Fall. But aside from that, I'm actually pretty happy with my list this year. And so much so that the honorable mentions deserve a little bit more honor than usual. So I'm actually going to read them in order from kind of bottom to top of how they would have been, 11, 12, 13, 14 on this list. And, give you guys a little bit of my thoughts on the honorable mentions as well. So let's actually get into that right now. Beau is Afraid, a wonderfully weird, bizarre entry into Ari Aster's filmography. Fantastic performances, classic Ari Aster style. Air, the first movie I saw this year, which I actually really liked. It has one of the best monologues of the year and is overall just a really compelling and fun story. Creed 3, a fantastic entry into the franchise, some great performances, some great fights, and a very, very promising debut feature from Michael B. Jordan, who really shows his love and his understanding of the medium as a director. The Creator, every cinematographer's favorite film this year, which I would say has been extremely inspiring and validating to a lot of up-and-coming filmmakers and their approach. What Gareth Edwards and cinematographers Greg Fraser and Oren Sofer have done with this film has, already become the stuff of legend. And on top of that, it's also a pretty entertaining movie as well. Foe, probably the most overlooked film of the year. This was the only one on this list that I actually didn't watch in a cinema. I actually just saw this on my laptop, but it really blew me away. One of the best subversions of its genre, some of the best performances from Saoirse Ronan and Paul Mescal. And if you haven't seen any trailers, if you don't know what this movie is about, please go in blind, because I actually think you'll be very, very pleasantly surprised. May December, shithousery at its finest, some of the most self-aware, funny, goofy B-movie type shenanigans I've seen in a film, but done in an elevated way, done by some of the best artists working in Hollywood today. And therefore, they were able to take this kind of B-movie plot very seriously, but not so seriously to the point where it becomes pretentious. I would say one of the most self-aware movies of the year. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Despite not being the strongest in the franchise or quite as strong as some of the previous entries, this is still very much a profound achievement in filmmaking, has some of the best sequences, possibly the best opening sequence in a Mission Impossible film, and whilst being by far the most exposition-heavy movie in the franchise, it does make up for that with some great action moments, some great set pieces that will age, I think, very, very well. Finally, the film that would have been number 11 on the list, Napoleon. Whilst a lot of people didn't really love this film, I respect it so much for Ridley Scott's approach, for his bravery, for his confidence behind the camera, for his efficiency behind the camera, his stamina. As an 85-year-old man making old Hollywood epics in a landscape of filmmaking that doesn't really support or promote epics of this size. And the fact that he's still able to do that really blows my mind. So with that said, let us get into the top 10 list, starting off with... So this film for me was actually the biggest surprise of the year. I was obviously a fan. I grew up with the original 4 movies, but I didn't love them that much. This for me was actually my favorite. I think this is actually the best one. I know some people disagree, but the character work here is something I really, really admired. The dynamic between Coriolanus Snow and Lucy Gray Baird was something I was a massive fan of. I thought that both Tom Blythe and Rachel Zegler gave really, really outstanding performances, pure charisma and magic from Rachel Zegler, who I've said I believe is reminiscent of the old school movie stars, someone, who is unlike a lot of the other actors that we see today. Francis Lawrence once again does some really, really interesting stuff with the filmmaking, and certainly with what I like to call an unconventional Casino Royale style structure, which I know put a lot of people off. I was personally a really big fan of that, but the core of this movie, and the reason I do love it so much, more than most perhaps, is that central relationship between Rachel Zegler and Tom Blythe, which I think was just done really, really well. Moving on to number 9. So yeah, this is a film that I have spoken about before on my friend Dylan's channel, The Popcorn Podcast. In fact, quick plug, I have probably spent more time on his channel this year than I have on mine. It has very much become a second home to me here on YouTube. And so if you would like to hear me talk about some of these films more in detail, because we've basically done episodes on all of these films, that are longer and more detailed than I would get to do as a review or as a video essay, please head on over to the Popcorn Podcast channel. I will leave a link of it down below in the description. It has been a truly fantastic experience to be on there. And we got to talk about Killers of the Flower Moon in detail. And this is a film that myself, Dylan, Mickey, and Theo, who spoke about it on the channel, on that episode, had issues with. This is by no means a perfect film. This is by no means something that we love. We don't necessarily think, I certainly don't think this is by any means Martin Scorsese's best movie or his strongest, at any means. I did, however, was lucky enough to get to meet and see Martin Scorsese, live, at the London Film Festival at the premiere of this film when he came on and spoke to all of us on stage. It was truly one of the greatest moments of my film audience, filmmaking journey so far. But the film itself, despite my issues with the pacing, the focus, the overall structure of the movie, I still really, really respect and admire it. Had some of the best performances of the Lily Gladstone, absolute unit of a performer, absolute powerhouse. She is completely deserving of being up there with all the Oscar nominees and everything. But the film also is measured, it is patient, it is, considerate as well to all of the people that is dedicating the film to. With so many directors either making films for themselves or for the audience, it was very refreshing to see Martin Scorsese make a movie specifically, in my opinion, for the Osage people, for all the people who didn't get the justice that they deserved. And so this film, despite not necessarily being my favorite, is super important, is a film that I respect, and just by nature of it being a Scorsese movie, definitely has a place on this list and on everyone's list. Moving on to number 8. Poor Things for me is one of the most delightfully creative movies of the year, and that is an adjective that I unfortunately don't get to use as much in today's landscape of filmmaking. But what Yorgos Lanthimos and the entire cast and crew were able to do is create something truly unique and creative. The way the movie looks and sounds and feels, I would almost liken it to a children's illustration book or a pop-up book. It is something that adults and people are almost incapable of imagining. And the fact that they were able to capture it, everything, the performances, the way it looks, the way it sounds, the costumes, the production design, all of these things come together, and the way they were able to capture it with so much sincerity, and that is the adjective that I would use here, is genuine sincerity, is truly an astounding achievement. And I think Emma Stone certainly has given one of the best performances of her career, one of the most unique performances we've seen in recent memory, not to mention both Willem Dafoe and Mark Ruffalo giving some of the best comedic performances we've seen, and in my opinion, the best use of the C word I've heard in a long time. Poor Things, fantastic movie. Check it out when it eventually comes out in some places. I know it's not out everywhere yet. Outstanding. At number 7 is, a return to form, as some would say, or a return to the comfort zone of one of my favorite directors, if not my favorite director, my man David Fincher. As everyone has already said, self-aware parody of Fincher's own career and his own outlook on work. It is a very funny movie. It is an incredibly well put together movie. One of the best fight scenes we've seen. One of the best one-on-one dinner table conversations between Fassbender and Tilda Swinton. An overall sound, solid, precise, as is everyone's favorite adjective with Fincher. A very precise movie that he has made entry into his filmography. However, the reason it is not as high as it would be, and something I've explored in depth again on the Popcorn Podcast, I hated the ending. I really, I feel very strongly about this. I've seen the film, I think, twice or nearly 3 times now. Yeah, not a fan of the ending. It felt very un-Fincher, and I basically said, making a movie called The Killer and having the movie end that way is like making a movie called Drive and have Ryan Gosling go everywhere on foot, or making a movie called There Will Be Blood and Daniel Day-Lewis never makes anyone bleed. It just felt anticlimactic, and it was the wrong kind of expectation subversion in my personal opinion. But again, that's just one man's opinion. Still love the rest of the movie though. Moving on. At number 6 is what I would describe as the summer movie of 2023. I know the movie came out obviously alongside Oppenheimer. But for me and for my own personal experiences, this was really the film that defined my summer, because when, I'm currently in Thailand at the moment, but back in the summer when I was here down in Phuket shooting the next feature, which has already been talked about on this channel, with all of my friends, all of the cast and crew, when they first arrived, to shoot the second leg of the movie, we went to do Barbieheimer. And so for the rest of that month, when we were all working together, we would really talk about Barbie, and we would really be quoting the lines and saying, "Hey Barbie, hey Ken." We would be playing the songs, on the nights out when we wouldn't be working, or on the car journeys to set. And so this film really, really marks a pivotal, a magical, and a special moment in my life. And on top of that, it is just a really, really good film. Some of the best, comedy moments, some of the best moments in film of this year. And great performances, Margot Robbie and of course my man Ryan Gosling. But just overall, a really, really fun experience. A film that feels so alive, so happy, so enthusiastic about its own existence. And again, for that and for the personal reasons I've just spoken about, Barbie is pretty high on this list. So Across the Spider-Verse, I would put up there with Poor Things as the only two movies I would truly describe as creative. This was a pretty, as far as animation films go, a pretty transcendent, revolutionary experience. I know a lot of people have actually said this is the greatest animated movie they've ever seen or whatever, and I can understand why. Whilst I don't personally agree with that, I can understand why. This was an audiovisual feast. Not only did it look good, sound good, feel good, it also had a wonderful story with some incredibly remarkably done characters, fully developed, fully formed. You really felt for them, you cared about them, you wanted them to win. And I know a lot of people says it has the part 1 syndrome. I disagree. This is one of the most well-paced 2-hour and 20-minute movies I've ever seen. It has a through line, it has a proper arc, because if you watch this movie as a Gwen Stacy movie and not a Miles Morales movie, it really, really works. Absolutely wonderful, and I cannot wait to see where this film, the franchise goes. If the third film is as good as the first two, we have an absolute all-timer of a franchise, of a trilogy on our hands here. Could very well go down as one of the greatest trilogies of all time. Moving on to number 4. So this film is pure Oscar bait. This is the Oscar bait movie of the year. But it is Oscar bait done to the best level possible. Bradley Cooper, as I've said in my Letterboxd review actually, this is the film that more than any other, I agree with every single decision he's made. Be it the distance or length of a camera pan, or the patterns on the clothes of a character. Every single thing that he has done, not only do I understand his intention behind it, I think that he succeeded in the execution. Carey Mulligan gives maybe the best, most powerful, strongest performance of her career. She really is just, carries the movie as much as Bradley Cooper does in front of and behind the camera. I don't want to make comparisons, but, in comparison to A Star is Born, despite the fact that it doesn't have the same kind of heart, the innocence, the purity of A Star is Born, this makes up for it in the craft. And I would actually say the greatest compliment I could give this film is, it is the first film I've watched in the the modern era that I would actually liken to the work of Orson Welles. And I think Bradley Cooper has cemented himself truly as an absolute masterful director, and someone who absolutely has to be taken seriously, despite only having directed 2 films. Absolutely, not only love, but respect Maestro. And if I was a member of the Academy, I would vote for Bradley Cooper to win Best Director. Just my opinion. Right, so this, I guess, is that movie that is really high on my list. Every year we have one, right? And it's very much a love it or hate it movie. Not only do I understand, but I actually kind of relate to the people who dislike this movie, because, full disclosure, I've worked on films where I kind of feel how people felt about this movie. Pretentious, arsey, unself-aware, shock factor, just overall kind of cheap. I understand what people mean by that. And I really understand where they're coming from. But on the flip side of that, I just really enjoyed this movie for the sheer entertainment value. It is very much shock factor, the movie. I didn't mind that. The performances, fantastic. Very well shot. Great soundtrack. Emerald Fennell, I think, did a really, really good job of being an entertainer. Not necessarily being a preacher, because obviously the twists, the reveals, third act, not that strong. But as an entertainer, she did it. She did the job. She got the job done. I was entertained from start to finish, super well paced, and despite, Flick Fanatics and most YouTubers and everything being people who want to analyze and want to dig deep into films, this was the one that I chose to entertain me at surface level. And that's why it's so high, because it did get the job done in a very, very nice and fun way. Oppenheimer is, in my opinion, one of the very, very few times in recent memory where we've basically had the entire film community of fans, but also just general audiences, agree that this film was outstanding. It just is good. There really isn't anything else to say about it. It's a fantastic piece of storytelling. Nolan took what could have been a very formulaic biopic, turned it into one of the most compelling thrillers, dramas, all kinds of things. You're basically getting 3 movies for the price of 1. Each hour of Oppenheimer is kind of a different genre, and I know it puts some people off, but I just really loved it. Some of the best performances, some of the best filmmaking, and overall, I would actually say, as I said, really satisfying in the sense that it really brought an entire community together for us all to agree that this was just a fantastic piece of work. So, number 1 this year, for the first time in this channel's history, is a tie. Because I've had ties before, but never in number 1. And the reason I have a tie at number 1 is because I don't believe that any film this year ticked all the boxes for me, despite me thinking that 2023, in my opinion, was a much better year for cinema than 2022. But there wasn't one film that was that kind of comprehensive experience that ticked every single box for me the way that Everything Everywhere did, or Parasite did, or La La Land did, or Blade Runner did, or even Widows in 2018, which is a very underrated movie for me. That was my top of 2018. So this year I have a tie between 2 films that are the polar opposites to one another, and when you put them together, make for a complete number 1 movie for me. And those films are... And... So yeah, completely opposite. Past Lives, on one hand, is a super internal experience, represents everything I love about films internally. The emotions, the intellectual side of cinema. It was the film that more than any other I related to. It was the film that made me reflect and appreciate certain moments, both positive and negative, in my life. And it was a film that on an emotional level came at a time that I needed it more than any other, that gave me peace of mind but also peace of heart, and allowed me to appreciate certain things from my past and also let go of certain weights, that were holding me down. And therefore, it will always have a very important place in my heart. I talk about this film as if it's, the greatest thing to ever happen to me. But the one issue I have that I can't fully give it, 5 stars or 10 out of 10 or full marks is there were certain filmmaking decisions that I didn't agree with. People were talking about Celine's Song and this being her debut and saying that, it doesn't feel like a debut. I, as a filmmaker, and just in my personal opinion as Panwa, could tell that it was, in fact, a debut feature, because there were 1 or 2 decisions made that I felt were done because it was the easy decision, not because it was the right decision. And despite me saying that, there are 1 or 2 moments of pure directorial genius. But there are 1 or 2 things that do keep it from being that 10 out of 10, that complete, comprehensive masterpiece. Which is why on the flip side of that, we have the greatest experience of cinematic purity I had this year. The best looking film, the one that in many ways encapsulates what I loved about the others. It has the creativity, the visual dynamism of Spider-Verse and Poor Things. It has the filmmaking measuredness and love for the medium of Oppenheimer and Killers of the Flower Moon. It has the craftsmanship and epicness and the efficiency of Napoleon and The Killer, And so this for me was like cinema. It was the closest to cinema on an extroverted external level. What I was able to see, what I was able to hear, all the things that you can see on screen was brilliant. Sheer brilliance. It has my favorite line of the year as well, when Hiroyuki Sanada says, friendship means little when it's convenient. That was my favorite line of the year. And so for me, this film represents, and as I've actually said, I believe John Wick Chapter 4 is, in my opinion, the best action movie ever made. It is complete. It is comprehensive in its own genre. But obviously, unlike Past Lives, doesn't really have a story, doesn't really have a plot, doesn't really have any kind of character development or emotional payoff. It does kind of, but just to, get by, just enough to get by. And so John Wick for me represents all of the things I love about cinema on an external level. Past Lives represents everything for me about cinema that I love on an internal level. And so when you put them together, we get my number one film of 2023. And so that's it, guys. That is my list. I have once again said this last year as well, but I'm going to say it again this year. I understand fully I have not been as present or, as consistent on the channel as I would like to be. It is obviously, as you guys know, because I am out there doing what I love, making movies, and it's only getting busier, it's only getting bigger and better. And the thing that I absolutely have to say one more time is, if you want to hear me talk about films and stuff like that, please head on over and support my friend Dylan's channel at the Popcorn Podcast. We've done some really, really wonderful things there. It's a big thing for him. And I think, he is deserving of support. He is deserving of backing because he really has worked bloody, bloody hard for it this year. And I've been on that thing like at least once a month. So there's at least 12 episodes, where I get to participate. And to really wrap up this year, I have to say that despite not being able to share so much of my experiences with you because so much of it is under wraps, I've had the most fulfilling, the happiest, the most humbling, the best year of my life. This has unequivocally been the greatest and happiest and the best year of my life. And so much of that is because of my love for films and my love for cinema. And despite not being able to share that as much with you guys on this channel, it is still very much there. The love is there, the care is there. And I can say to you right now with the utmost confidence that this time off that I've taken has been necessary for me to hopefully in the near future come back to this channel with a lot of great stories to tell, with a lot of great things to share, and take you guys on this journey with me, because this really has been my home and has been a vessel for me to express my love and my confidence towards this medium for however many years now. I think it's been nearly 8, 9, 10 years now. And I can say with great confidence that this is just the beginning. We are barely scratching the surface with what we can do with Flick Fanatics and what we can do as a community for films. And I so very much look forward to sharing it with you and joining you guys on this adventure in the years to come, and certainly in 2024 and 2025, which both promise to have some wonderful journeys and adventures ahead of us. Thank you very, very much for another fantastic year of support, another fantastic year of films. I wish you all the very happiest, best new year with your friends and family, and I will see you in 2024 for more wins to come. Cheers, guys.